Hi, I'm Esme. 3 days before Christmas, my parents texted me. Christmas isn't for failures. Then they threw a yacht party for my sister and sent me the invoice, her 19T $900 bill attached to my name. But this story isn't just about a cruel message or a stolen holiday. It's about what came after the moment I sent back one single dollar and something that made them all go silent. Before we begin, what's the worst thing your family's ever said to you during the holidays? Tell me in the comments, I read. Everyone, now let me tell you what happened next. I was sitting at the kitchen table, elbow deep in red construction paper and dried glue. Elijah was humming to himself carefully, cutting out a crooked snowman, while I penciled in little stars on a handmade advent calendar. It wasn't much, just something I did each December since he was 5. One little kindness for each day until Christmas. Candy canes, hot cocoa, extra reading time, a way to make the season feel magical, even if our lives weren't the heater. Coughed behind us, I reached for my tea, now lukewarm, and glanced at my phone as it buzzed against the tabletop. I smiled. The family group chat. Maybe they were finally figuring out Christmas plans. I tapped the screen. Can't wait to see everyone on the yacht. Bring your swimsuits and secret Santa gifts. I stared, then read it again. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. Not Esme, can you bring the desserts again? Not, let's carpool from Mom's. Just nothing. There was a photo attached, Raya posing in a Santa bikini top on a yacht deck, holding a mimosa, grinning like she had no idea what shame was. I could see Mom in the background laughing with a man in a velvet blazer I didn't recognize, and Dad shirtless, already pink from the sun. Everyone looked like they'd been celebrating for hours. Elijah, I said quietly, why don't you go pick a story for bedtime? I'll be there in 5. He nodded, unaware his little socked feet padded down the hallway. I stared at the phone again, thumb frozen over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to reply. Ask, was I supposed to see this? But I knew better. This wasn't a mistake. It was strategic silence, the kind that twists slowly like a knife. Last year flashed across my mind. Raya had a meltdown and couldn't host again, so I had everyone over. My 2-bedroom apartment barely fit 6. Let alone the whole clan. I cleaned for 2 days straight, made a ham with my grandmother's glaze, even printed little place cards with gold foil. No one noticed. They came, they ate, they left. No thank you, no offer to help clean. Mom said, well, at least Raya got a break. I blinked, returning to the present. My phone pinged again this time. It was an email. I opened it without thinking. Subject: shared family expenses, reimbursement. It was from Dad. No message body, just a PDF attachment. I opened it. The document listed catering services, a private DJ luxury napkin rental, who rents napkins, and the deposit for a yacht rental. $19, $900 there at the bottom, it said. Divided among family. Your share, $19. $9,900 paid in advance on your behalf. Please reimburse at earliest convenience. I choked out a laugh, quiet and sharp, like something had cracked. So that was it. Not only had they excluded me, but they were billing me for the party. I wasn't invited to. Elijah, I called. Steadying my voice. Story time. He came running in with, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Eyes bright. Will Grandma and Grandpa come this year? He asked, settling beside me on the couch. I smoothed his hair. They're really busy this Christmas, sweetheart. He nodded, satisfied, and opened the book. But I wasn't really reading. My eyes blurred on the pages as I thought back every birthday I covered. When Raya forgot every bill I picked up quietly, every emergency loan that became a gift. My sister didn't work. My parents said she was fragile. I was the responsible one, the one they didn't worry about. I never made a scene. That was my mistake. After Elijah fell asleep, I padded back into the kitchen, turned on the light, and stared at the invoice again. Hot. Gall of it, and yet it didn't make me angry the way I thought it would not. Fiery rage, something colder, sharper. I glanced at the fridge. One of Elijah's paper snowflakes fluttered slightly from the vent. It was crooked and lopsided, but it was his. I inhaled slowly, then walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up my financial dashboard. There it was, every joint account, every shared credit card I'd co-signed just in case Raya needed groceries. I hadn't looked at it in months. One card had a $4 $200 charge for a spa resort. Another had a charge labeled yacht catering deposit. And there were automatic transfers monthly from my backup savings into an account I'd helped set up for Raya. Years ago, I clicked through each tab, reviewed every line. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just whispered, "Let's see how they do." Without my silence, the glow from my laptop lit up the room with a quiet intensity. As Elijah slept in the other room, my whisper still lingered in the air. Not out loud anymore, but inside me, not angry, not sad, just done. I took a breath and clicked open the first tab, joint family accounts. Dad had set them up years ago, when I was still the one they could count on, back when I was putting groceries on my card during Raya's transition year. Back when I still believed being useful meant being loved. The screen loaded slowly. I waited, watching the little wheel spin like it was winding up years of resentment. First, the mutual investment account tied to my name and theirs. I clicked through the dashboard, scrolled past the balances, and found the freeze function quiet, reversible. No alert goes out when you pause something, it just stops responding. I clicked it, confirmed. Second, the gift card registry Dad used for family logistics. I'd seen the name on the yacht invoice, a Whole Foods tab, luxury napkins even, a spa credit linked to my payment method. I hadn't noticed until the catering item matched the card number I recognized. Paused. Gone. Third, Raya's emergency credit card, the one she accidentally used to book her Coachella stay 2 years ago, and her Uber glitch and the Vegas spa weekend she said was a misunderstanding. Her card was technically under my business branch. I had applied for it back when she promised to pay for job coaching. She never paid. I hovered over the control panel. This one took a second longer, then I clicked. Access revoked. No warning, no drama, just silence. I sat back for a moment, letting my shoulders settle into the chair. The room didn't feel brighter, but it felt clearer. I opened my PayPal. Next, the family shared email account was still in the contact list, the one they used for vacations and group expenses. Always assuming I'd put the gap, I typed in exactly $1 note for your loyalty napkins. I hit send. That was it. I closed the laptop gently, the way you'd close a book you'd outgrown. Then I grabbed my keys and my coat. Elijah's school let out at 3:05, and I never wanted him to wait a minute on the drive. There he told me all about his Christmas coloring contest, how he'd drawn a snowman on a skateboard. He asked if we could hang it next to last year's paper tree. I nodded. Of course, buddy. We got home just before 4. I heated up some leftover chicken and made him a hot cocoa with extra marshmallows. The way he liked it outside, the sky had already gone soft with sunset as he sat on the couch drawing another snowman. This one with sunglasses. I checked my phone once more. No new messages, no panic, not yet. But miles away on a yacht anchored just off the bay, things were beginning to unravel. Raya, dressed in something designer and barely weather appropriate, reached for her champagne order. Her assistant had sent it via delivery app. All she had to do was swipe. Declined. She blinked. Tried again. Declined. Her smile faltered. She pulled out her phone. This can't be right, she muttered in the lounge below deck. My mother had just opened the vacation fund account on her iPad. The screen said restricted. She refreshed, still locked. Henry, she called out my father. Halfway through bragging about the custom DJ mix to some acquaintance from their yacht club, came over with a glass of white wine. What she turned the screen toward him. It's frozen. I can't even see the balance. He frowned, pulled out his phone. That's when he saw it, a PayPal notification, $1 received from Esme Memo. For your loyalty napkins. He blinked. Then again. What the hell is this? My mother stared. Did she just... He didn't answer, his jaw clenched around them. The yacht crew pretended not to notice, but I know how these things go. Whispers slip faster than champagne pours on my end. It was calm. Elijah had fallen asleep on the couch after dinner, a candy cane still in his hand. I lifted him gently and tucked him into bed, then returned to the kitchen. There on the fridge was the snowflake he'd made me last week. Paper, scissors, glitter, glue. He'd even written in shaky crayon, to the best mom. I leaned closer and smiled right next to it, in a little wooden frame I'd kept from childhood, was the old 1998 Christmas card from my parents, back when we all wore matching red sweaters and pretended nothing was wrong, back when Raya was their angel and I was the one holding the camera remote for years. I whispered to myself I thought being the stable one meant being invisible. Turns out I was just the foundation under their feet. My voice was steady, no tears. Not anymore. I sat down, wrote a grocery list, paid 2 bills, and scheduled Elijah's dentist appointment. Then I poured myself a glass of water and opened my book. 10 pages in my phone, buzzed on the table. I turned it over. A message from Mom. Call us now. Yum. My thumb hovered over the screen. The text from my mother still glared at me, cold, commanding, call us now. I locked the phone without responding. The silence in the apartment was thick like wool wrapped around my chest. Elijah was already asleep in his room, curled up under the blanket, with the little fox embroidery he used to drag everywhere when he was younger. The hum of the dishwasher and the faint rattle of wind against the balcony door were the only sounds left. I turned back toward the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and walked to the living room. But before I even sat down, the phone lit up again. Voicemail. Not from her, from Aunt Coralie. The name alone made my hand shake. A little. Aunt Coralie had always been the soft one, the one who sent birthday cards when no one else did, the one who once told me quietly at my high school graduation, "Don't let them dim you." The message began to play on its own, "Sweetheart." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know what your mom told you, but I was there on the yacht. I heard her. I just need you to hear this." I sank onto the arm of the couch, my breath catching. She continued, voice trembling. "She told the Bartons that you'd refused to come to Christmas, that you were too proud to forgive. She made it sound like you chose your career and fancy city life over your family." I closed my eyes. The words shouldn't have surprised me, but they still felt like needles. Flashbacks flickered behind my eyelids. Back in March, when Dad's utilities were about to be cut off, I'd gotten the notice forwarded to my old email, the one tied to their old bank account. I didn't call, I didn't ask, I just paid it. Then again in July, when I learned from a mutual contact that Raya had gotten into a private rehab facility in Arizona. She'd overdosed. Again, the facility required a deposit, $2.00 sent anonymously from a burner account I'd set up with a generic name. I didn't want her or them to think I was seeking credit. Coral's voice cracked. "They've been telling everyone you cut them off, that you haven't sent a dime in months, that you ghosted them, that they're struggling because of you." She paused. "But you did. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, I just stared at the far wall, where Elijah's latest school painting, some blue creature with too many arms, was taped above the light switch. The glass of water in my hand had gone warm. My jaw clenched, but the tears still came slow and reluctant. I didn't sob, I just let them fall. They needed a villain, I whispered to no one, and I made it easy for them. It was the first time I said it aloud, and once I did, it rang so clearly, I wondered how I hadn't seen it before. My silence, my refusal to explain myself, to defend, to fight back, had become a blank canvas for them to paint over, and they'd chosen black. I stood up slowly and walked to my bedroom. The drawer of my nightstand creaked as I pulled it open. Inside, beneath a box of Elijah's baby teeth I still hadn't thrown out, sat a cream-colored envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's cursive, tight, elegant, always a bit smug in its neatness. She'd sent it last month. I'd tucked it away without opening it. That was around the time she stopped replying to my check-ins. I'd assumed she was giving me the silent treatment again. I hadn't expected anything, but I also hadn't expected this much. Nothing. I tore the envelope open now. A check slipped out. My hands felt strangely distant as I held it. $300 memo line, repayment for rehab. And just below in faint ink, she'd written, "Don't think this makes you better than her." I stared at it for a long time, the gall, the rewriting of reality wrapped in politeness and paper. She'd taken a moment of quiet generosity, one I never even claimed, and turned it into a petty game of who owed who. This wasn't about money. Not anymore. It was about narrative, about control, about how a mother could lie so easily, so publicly, while still calling it family loyalty. I folded the check in half then again until it was just a small square of disappointment. I didn't tear it. I wasn't angry enough for that. Not tonight. I walked to the fridge, slipped the check under the magnet, shaped like a cinnamon bun Elijah had made in preschool, and stepped back. It looked ridiculous there, and yet somehow... Right, my phone buzzed again this time. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was, and I already knew I wasn't playing their game anymore. I sat frozen at the kitchen counter, still holding the check from my mother. The ink on the memo line repayment for rehab had already bled slightly from where my thumb pressed too long below it, a message that was more accusation than gratitude. Don't think this makes you better than her. I whispered it once, slowly, just to feel the weight of it again. Then I looked at my laptop no more, waiting no more, wondering what was real and what was twisted to look real. I opened a new tab and typed Yacht Blue Events. San Diego contact their site, loaded with glossy images of sailboats, champagne flutes, and golden sunset smiles. None of them felt as warm as they looked. I filled out their inquiry form, but instead of using my full name, I posed as E. Sable Family Administrator. I kept the message short, requesting a full itemized receipt for the December 23rd event under the Sable account for tax purposes. I clicked send, then sat back and watched the cursor blink in my inbox like it was mocking me while waiting. I opened a second window and searched something else that had been tugging at the edge of my memory. The Sable Family Hope Fund. Our last name, our family photos, plastered on their homepage, and yet I hadn't donated a single cent officially at least. I didn't think I had. 3 hours passed. The sun dipped behind the skyline, and I hadn't moved from that spot. Then ping a new email, subject Yacht Blue Event Receipt. Sable Family Booking Attachment Yacht Event. Sable Deck 23 PDF. I opened the file and stared. Total $38. $7.72 under the bolded primary sponsor name there. It was in black and white, Esme Elise Sable. I didn't breathe my name, wasn't just mentioned, it was headlining it. They didn't just use my money, they used my identity. That same tight burning feeling returned to my chest. Not just betrayal, something deeper. Like I'd been living in a room where every mirror had been quietly swapped for funhouse glass, and I was only now seeing how warped the reflection really was. I clicked back to the family's social media posts. Raya had uploaded a dozen photos from that same yacht party in one. She was holding a champagne glass with a caption, "To my generous sister family first." And underneath hundreds of likes, a few mutual friends had commented, "Esme, you're such a good soul." One even wrote, "Your family's lucky to have you." I closed the tab. The next morning, I drove across town to a modest building with an old painted sign, Sable Family Hope Fund. A little bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. A young woman at the front desk looked up from behind her monitor. "Hi there, can I help you?" I kept my voice steady. "Yes, I'd like to see the donor file for the foundation." "My name is Esme Sable." Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, wow, sure, give me a sec." She stood and walked toward a back room. "We've always listed you as our second biggest donor, you know." For like 4 years now, my stomach dropped. She returned with a thick folder. "Here's your file copies of every major donation ledgers, even the holiday thank you cards." I took it from her, nodded politely, then stepped aside to read line after line, showed monthly transfers. $100, $3,000, even a couple at $4. $500, each one marked auto-deduct from Act 2247. That was my old checking account, the one I closed after the apartment break-in. 2 years ago, I had set up recurring transfers long before that for a different cause. I never imagined they'd kept them going, or worse, rerouted them. Then I found the stack of thank you notes. They weren't signed by me, the return address on the envelopes, my parents' house. I stood in the lobby for a long second, my pulse roaring in my ears. They didn't just use me. They became me when it was convenient. I stepped outside into the cool December air and just stood there. Cars passed. People laughed in the coffee shop across the street, and I just stood. They didn't just erase me. I said aloud, almost like I was reminding myself of something I already knew. They wore me like a mask. I drove home in silence back at my apartment. I poured a glass of water and sat again at the kitchen counter. I looked down at the donor file, then opened my phone and started snapping pictures of every page. I was done hoping things would make sense. I was gathering proof now. Then my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered Esme. It was my boss's assistant. Yes, you've been requested to speak at the Sable Fund's New Year Gala. It says here you're listed as the keynote donor. I didn't say anything. I just looked down at the folder still in my lap. I held the phone to my ear for just a breath longer than necessary, then said evenly, "Tell them I accept." I ended the call without another word and let the silence settle around me like a second skin. Then I picked up my cell and dialed Maya. "I need a hairstylist tomorrow morning," I said, already opening my laptop, "and dig up the full bylaws of the Sable Foundation, especially the clauses around donor rights and public representation." Maya didn't ask questions. She just replied, "You'll have them by noon." That night, after putting Elijah to bed, I sat at the kitchen island and stared at the invitation email again. Gilded fonts, platitudes like philanthropic leadership and family vision. My name was everywhere, but not a single word had been written by me. I didn't need sequins or a stylist's opinion. I chose a simple black satin gown. Long sleeves, high neckline, classic controlled, no sparkle, no escort, just me. I asked Maya to stay with Elijah and left before sunset, making the drive to the Belmere in silence. The hotel was lit up like a movie premiere, valet and burgundy jackets, photographers snapping candid moments of minor local celebrities. I walked past them without pause, the hem of my gown whispering across the marble inside the grand ballroom. The air shimmered with champagne laughter. Crystal centerpieces glittered, but my eyes went straight to the head table where my parents sat. My mother's smile froze mid-sip. My father blinked slowly, then leaned in to murmur something to her. Neither moved to greet me. I didn't expect them to. A staffer approached and led me toward a private waiting area near the stage. "You'll be speaking after the foundation's video montage." "Miss Sable," he said politely. "Thank you," I replied, folding their pre-written speech back into my clutch without looking at it. I already knew what I needed to say. 15 minutes later, I stood backstage as the video ended on the massive screens. Images of my family played, smiling with children standing with oversized checks posing in front of shelters I'd never seen. Then the host took the mic, and now please join me in welcoming the heart behind it all, our second largest donor and guiding light. Ms. Esme Sable. Polite applause, scattered cheers. I stepped into the light. The ballroom hushed as I reached the podium. I set their speech down on the stand, took a breath and folded the paper in half, then again and slipped it into the inside pocket of my gown. "My name is Esme," I said, "and I'm not here tonight because I feel honored." The room stilled, even the clinking of glass stopped. "I'm here because I read a receipt with my name forged on it." Gasps rippled. People turned their heads for years. I continued, "I've been the silent sponsor behind bills. I didn't approve events I didn't attend, and a family name I wasn't invited to use while I was being called the difficult daughter, the distant one I was unknowingly funding. This foundation's operations every single month, from an account they never thought I'd check." I paused, letting the weight of it land. My eyes locked with my father's across the room. He didn't blink. My mother's knuckles were white against her wine glass. "I'm not here to make a scene," I said. "I'm here to make a correction. As of tonight, I withdraw every dollar, every tie, every silence. This," I gestured around the ballroom, "no longer carries my name." A few guests clapped quietly. Others exchanged nervous glances. Then the doors slammed open behind me. "Stop!" Raya's voice rang out brittle and frantic. She strode toward the stage in a half-zipped cocktail dress, heels clicking too fast, makeup uneven. "You're lying," she shouted, snatching a microphone from the corner of the stage. "You said you'd never tell we had an agreement." I turned to her calmly. "Thank you, Raya," I said. "I didn't say it, you just did." Her face crumpled. The room stirred. Several foundation staff exchanged glances. One of them, a woman I vaguely recognized, walked off stage, headset still on. I stepped back from the mic. "Thank you for listening. I said, then turned and walked off stage. I didn't look back, but I didn't need to. My father intercepted me before I reached the corridor. He gripped my arm, not hard, but enough to halt me. His voice was tight, trembling with rage. "You've ruined us." I looked him straight in the eye. "No," I said softly. "I just stopped saving you." I pulled my arm free and stepped past my father without another word. The ballroom lights behind me faded into muffled chatterforks, scraping plates, and the low hum of a shaken crowd. I walked down the marbled hallway toward the entrance, every click of my heels cutting through the confusion I'd just left behind. Outside, the winter air clung to my skin. Cool, still quiet, the kind of silence that falls right before a shift. Just as I reached the valet stand, a woman in a long gray coat stepped forward. She had silvering hair, smart brown eyes, and the posture of someone who had spent a lifetime standing straight in courtrooms. "Esme Sable." She asked. I turned to her, my breath still short from everything that had just happened. "Yes, I'm Lucinda Crowley. I worked with your Uncle Nate. I've been trying to reach you for weeks." His estate file was sealed, but she paused, then handed me a folder thick, worn at the edges. I kept watching. Something didn't add up. I blinked, surprised by how steady her voice was. Everyone else in that ballroom had either shrunk or exploded, but this woman, she felt like truth. We didn't talk more. She gestured to a cafe across the street, and I followed. A few minutes later, we were seated at a small corner table, away from the windows, tucked beneath a quiet chandelier that buzzed just faintly enough to feel alive. Lucinda opened the folder and spread out years of records, some typed, others handwritten, some highlighted in faded orange. I recognized my name again and again. 3 separate bank accounts, all co-signed by Esme Sable. One account had been closed 5 years ago. One defaulted, one still active with a recent withdrawal of $90. 0 marked as a reallocation. Lucinda slid that one toward me. "This transaction happened 6 months ago, filed under your social security number, tied to your name." My stomach dropped. "I didn't sign this," I said. My voice was low, but certain. "I never even knew these accounts existed." "I believe you," she said. "I've worked in estate law 38 years. I know forged signatures when I see them. And your uncle, he was very clear. He wanted to protect you. He left something for you that stopped me." "Left me something," she nodded. "A trust for your education and housing. But by the time I tried to follow up a year after his passing, your name had been removed from the beneficiary list. The trust had been rerouted through a different account, an entity labeled the Sable Foundation. Sound familiar?" I nodded slowly, remembering the check stubs, the donation receipts they used to wave in front of me like proof of virtue. They were using it to look good, to fund events, image work, and that came from what my uncle left me. Lucinda didn't answer. She didn't have to. I sifted through more papers there. It was an old hand-signed trust agreement with my full name and the original terms: full tuition, graduate housing, monthly living stipend, none of which I ever received. "I thought it was just that they didn't believe in me," I murmured. "I thought I was just the failure." Lucinda's voice softened. "You were erased in public, but in private. They harvested you." My breath caught. That was the word, harvested. Every time they dismissed me, every time I was told to sit quietly, or not embarrass the family, they were cashing in on something meant for me. "I remember my uncle," I said quietly, tracing the faded edge of a document. "He took me to the museum when no one else did. Sent me a journal. When I said I wanted to write, he was the only one who asked how I was doing, and actually waited for the answer." Lucinda gently reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. "Everything is here," she said. "Emails, transaction logs, scanned signatures. It's enough to bring legal action." I looked at the tiny device on the table next to my half-drunk tea. It felt both small and massive. Proof of theft. Yes, but also proof of who I had always been. Someone worth protecting. Someone worth leaving something to. She leaned forward, eyes steady. "You'll need a good lawyer." I stared down for a moment, then lifted my gaze and smiled, quiet but sharp. "I don't need a lawyer," I said softly. "I need the right audience." I didn't sleep that night after Lucinda left. I sat in my car for nearly 10 minutes, watching headlights blur through my windshield. My hands didn't shake, but my breath felt measured too. Measured like my body already knew this wasn't about grief anymore. It was accounting by the time I walked into my apartment. Elijah was asleep, the TV flickering in the background. A rerun of something cheerful hummed from the living room, completely detached from the reality in my bag, an unmarked flash drive that could dismantle everything they'd built on my back. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and plugged the drive in. Let's begin. I whispered, the files opened one after another. PDFs, scanned checks, foundation ledgers. Even a Christmas photo I hadn't seen before. All of it neatly organized by Lucinda. The woman had done her homework. My name was everywhere, or rather, it was used everywhere. Co-signer on defaulted loans. Authorized donor for fake charitable disbursements. I even found an invoice for a yacht chartered out of Miami Memo Line. Staff appreciation cruise. Sable Foundation, they used my name for that too, and I'd never even been invited. I opened my laptop's camera, clicked record, and sat up straight. My name is Esme Sable, I said slowly, clearly. And for 10 years, I was erased while funding their legacy. No tears, no drama. Just clarity. I held up the papers one by one. My supposed signature on 3 different accounts forged. Not even close to my actual handwriting, next a transaction log showing $90,000 transferred to an account labeled housing support, yet it led straight to a beach property in my sister's name. I clicked next the tax forms from the foundation, and then a scanned copy of my uncle's original trust fund. The one meant for me, my name crossed out a redirection clause, added after his death. They said Christmas wasn't for failures. I said still calm, but they sent me the bill. Here's the receipt. I paused and took a slow breath. This isn't revenge, it's record keeping. I ended the recording and saved it under one name. KS, a gift of truth. I uploaded it to a private video link and watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. Then I printed the QR code that would take anyone straight to it. Just a scan away from the truth. It was 2:12 a.m. at 700 A. Elijah came into the kitchen in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Mom, are we doing presents this year? I knelt down and kissed his forehead. We're doing peace this year. That's the best one. He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. That's the thing about children, they feel before they understand. He knew something had shifted in me, and maybe in us after breakfast. While Elijah sat drawing in the living room, I carefully packed a small white gift box inside. I placed a check for $1. The memo line read, "Final payment." I slid in the certificate that once recognized me as a founding donor to the Sable Foundation. Voided stamped in bold red ink. Then I slipped in the QR code, etched into a small glass plate I'd ordered months ago for a craft project. I tied it all with gold ribbon. No note, just the facts. That afternoon, I drove to the post office and stood in line like anyone else. No one knew what I was holding. The box was addressed to my parents, priority. No return address, just the right amount of mystery when I got home. I didn't rush to check if they'd seen it. I didn't stalk the delivery tracking page. I just made dinner, watched a movie with Elijah, and fell asleep for the first time in what felt like a season. Christmas morning came softly. Outside, the city was still snow, flurried against the window panes, and somewhere in the distance church bells chimed. Elijah opened his small gifts with quiet joy. A new sketchbook, a pair of gloves, a book on marine animals, but across town in the living room, I hadn't been invited to. In years, my father held the box with a scowl. My mother narrowed her eyes at the glass plate inside, lifting it like it might explode. "What is this?" my sister asked, frowning. My mother pulled out her phone and scanned the QR code. The video began to play. My voice echoed from her screen, calm and unshaken. My name is Esme Sable, and for 10 years the room went silent. My father dropped his fork. My sister's face lost all color. My mother's hand trembled as she reached to pause it, but didn't. And then back in my apartment, my phone buzzed once, then again and again. I picked it up. 47 missed calls. Then came the knock at the door. The second knock was firmer than the first. The third, slower, almost hesitant. I stood still for a moment, hand on the door knob, letting the weight of those knocks settle. Then I opened it, My mother stood there clutching her purse like it was a shield. Her coat was buttoned wrong, one button off, and her makeup was faintly smudged around her eyes. Not crying, but close. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice quieter than I remembered. Not cold, not sharp, just brittle. I stepped back wordlessly, letting the door swing wider. She passed me with careful steps, as if she wasn't sure the floor would hold her. I closed the door behind us and followed her into the living room, where the afternoon light was falling in patches through the curtains. She sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed tightly, fingers twisting the strap of her bag. I didn't offer her tea. "Not yet, we saw the video." She began, glancing at me, then down again. "Your father, he didn't know what Raya was doing with the foundation. We were told you saw the truth." I said, keeping my voice even. She blinked. "Esme, sweetheart." I held up one hand, walked to the small speaker on the bookshelf, and tapped my phone. It connected with a soft chime. I hit play. Raya's voice filled the room. Bright, unbothered, relaxed. "Mom, Esme's good for it. She never checks the accounts. I mean, it's her name on the foundation, but that's the whole point, right?" In the background, faint laughter. My mother's unmistakable. Then she thinks she's still protecting the family name. Let the voicemail play to the end. The silence that followed was thicker than anything spoken. My mother's hands trembled slightly on her lap. That was taken out of context, and I didn't reply. I walked to the kitchen, boiled water, and poured 2 cups of tea. One for her, one for me. I placed hers on the table in front of her, untouched. I sat across, cupping mine between my palms. "I'm not here to yell," I said, meeting her eyes. "I'm here to end this well." She blinked again, slower this time, and when I reached to the side table and picked up a small cream-colored envelope, sealed hand rest in cursive. I placed it gently beside her tea. She looked down at it, unsure. "It's a letter," I said, titled, "Inheritance. Redefined. I've forfeited any and all claims to the family estate. I've withdrawn from the foundation, removed my name, and signed a legal declaration of no financial ties. Any future contact with me will have to be initiated by you. Not your lawyers, not Raya, not through gossip or guilt you." Her face crumpled, not in shock, more like disbelief. Finally catching up with reality. "But we're family." I nodded. "Yes, and you once told me Christmas wasn't for failures." So I built a new definition, a new tradition. One where I am no longer required to bleed silently so others can smile. "You'll regret this," she whispered, voice catching. "Someday when the dust settles." "No," I said, standing slowly. "What I regret is waiting this long to see things clearly." She didn't answer, just sat there, small in her coat, hands on the envelope like it might burn her. From down the hall, Elijah's laugh echoed faintly. He was watching some animated movie. The contrast made the room even heavier. Eventually she rose. She didn't take the tea. She didn't hug me. She walked to the door slowly, like someone moving through a fog, as she stepped onto the porch. The cold air caught her breath. She turned back once, eyes shining. Not with tears, but with something unspoken, regret, maybe, or just recognition. I didn't say goodbye. I simply closed the door, and this time I locked it deliberately. Quietly, I lit the small cinnamon-scented candle by the front window. The flame flickered softly, its glow catching in the glass, as snow began to fall again. Light, steady, silent outside the street was mostly dark. Porch lights glowed faintly, but ours felt different, quieter, safer behind me. The door clicked into place, locked with the finality of someone who had nothing left to explain. I exhaled slowly from the kitchen. I could hear Elijah's laughter drifting in light and unbothered as he tried to explain a card trick to Maya, who clearly wasn't buying it somewhere deeper in the apartment. The jazz station hummed low and steady, the bass line warm like an old friend settling in. This wasn't the kind of Christmas I grew up with. There were no strings of antique ornaments passed down from Anne's side. No roast turkey centerpiece or pretended cheer around a carved mahogany table. There were no matching sweaters, no family politics played out over wine, and thank God, Instead, there were mismatched mugs filled with cider, a small dollar store tree blinking in the corner, and people who had come. Not because they were supposed to, but because they wanted to. Maya had brought her signature orange cranberry scones. Miss Greta from next door brought her famous sweet potato pie. Mr. Tompkins, our retired mailman, popped in for exactly 20 minutes, just long enough to sing 2 carols slightly off-key, and deliver a tin of chocolate-dipped pretzels. With a crooked bow, we sat around my circular dining table. 4 chairs, 1 folding stool, and Elijah perched on a cushion. The table wasn't fancy. It wobbled slightly if you leaned too hard, but it was mine, and tonight it held laughter, not judgment, kindness, not expectations. As I reached for a pot of cocoa warming on the stove, Elijah appeared beside me, his socks slightly mismatched. "Mom," he said, tugging gently on my sleeve, "this is for you." He handed me a sheet of paper folded carefully into fourths. I opened it slowly, already smiling. Crayon scrolls filled the page, a stick figure me with what I assumed was a superhero cape. A speech bubble above read, "You're the best, not a failure." Below that, in slightly crooked letters, he'd written, "Love your family forever." I didn't say anything right away. My throat tightened too much, so I hugged him instead hard enough that he giggled. "You okay, Mom?" he whispered. "I'm better than okay." I murmured, "I'm full." As he skipped off to show Maya his drawing, I turned back toward the fridge. It looked different now. The Old Magnet Sable Foundation Gala invites Raya's engagement announcement. Anne's holiday recipe clippings were all gone. In their place were Elijah's school photos, Maya and me grinning at the beach last summer, and a simple magnet that read, "You are enough." I'd bought it on a whim at a thrift shop, never realizing how much I'd need it. Now I poured the cocoa into mugs and carried them to the table. Everyone scooted aside to make room, even if it meant bumping elbows. "You didn't have to go all out, Esme," Maya said, sipping. "This is the best Christmas I've had in years." "Same here," Miss Greta chimed in. No one judged my pie for being a little burnt this time. We laughed, not loud, not boisterous, just warm. And for the first time in what felt like years, I leaned back, breathed deeply, and allowed myself to feel it. Peace. My phone buzzed gently on the counter. A new message, unknown number. "I watched your video. I left my own toxic family today." "Thank you." I stared at it for a moment, then forwarded it to myself just so I wouldn't forget. Then I raised my mug, slowly catching each of their eyes to failures. I said softly, "May we keep redefining what that word means." Mugs, cling ticket, smiles, widened. No one needed a speech. The silence that followed said enough. After dessert, Maya started stacking the dishes, but I waved her off. "Sit, I'll take care of it later." Elijah yawned and curled up on the couch, half under a throw blanket, half on top of it like always. Maya smiled. "Next year, your place again," I grinned back. "Only if there's extra marshmallows," she gave a mock salute. "You got it." I walked over to Elijah and gently tucked the blanket around his shoulders. He stirred, but didn't wake. Just murmured something about hot cocoa and drifted deeper into sleep. The tree lights twinkled gently. No big star at the top. No store-bought perfection, but they glowed. I leaned in close and whispered, "Merry Christmas, kiddo, we made it." The others began to gather their coats. The snow outside had picked up, but it wasn't fierce, just soft, steady clean as the last guest stepped out. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the flakes catch the light. We didn't burn the old house down. We just walked out and built something warmer.